Level 1. The homeless. You are 22 years old. You are sitting on a bench outside a public library because it is the only building in the city that will let you sit somewhere warm without buying anything. Your mother died 4 months ago. The apartment went with her, since your name was never on the lease. Your younger brother Marcus is staying with an aunt 2 states away who could not take both of you. You have a duffel bag with 3 shirts, a phone with a cracked screen and no service plan, and $60 folded into your shoe because you read somewhere that pickpockets check pockets first. You sleep in a shelter most nights, when there is space, and outside when there is not. An older man on the same bench most evenings introduces himself as Ray. He is maybe 60, with the kind of quiet, watchful stillness of someone who has been through worse than this and come out the other side changed rather than broken. He tells you, on the second night, that he used to run a small logistics company before a divorce and a bad year took it apart piece by piece. You do not fully believe him. Homeless men tell you all kinds of stories to pass the time. You will learn, eventually, that Ray was telling the truth the entire time. The library opens at 9 every morning. You are there before it opens, waiting by the door, because it is warm and because the computers are free. You do not know what you are looking for the first few weeks. You just know you cannot sit still with nothing to do while your entire life has collapsed around you. One afternoon you watch a free coding tutorial because it is the first thing on the recommended list, mostly out of boredom. Something about it holds your attention in a way almost nothing else has since your mother died. You do not know it yet, but this is the exact moment everything starts, on a library computer with a 20-minute time limit and a line of people waiting behind you. Level 2. The survivor. You get a job stocking overnight shelves at a grocery store, the only place hiring someone with your current address, which is technically none. The manager does not ask many questions. The pay is barely above minimum wage, but it is enough, combined with a shelter bed, to survive. You spend your days off at the library, working through free coding courses, one YouTube video at a time. Ray notices the pattern. He starts asking you what you learned each day, the way an old teacher checks homework, except he seems to genuinely want to know. You learn HTML, then basic JavaScript, then enough about how websites actually function to build a crude one for a fake business, just to prove to yourself you could. Ray watches you work on the library computer one afternoon and tells you something you will repeat to yourself for the rest of your life. Most people fail not because they lack the ability, but because they quit exactly 1 week before the thing would have worked. You do not know if that is true. You decide to act as if it is. You save every dollar you can. You eat the cheapest food the grocery store sells, most of it slightly past its sell-by date and marked down, food you are technically allowed to take home under store policy. After 8 months, you have $2,200 saved, more money than you have ever had in your life, sitting in a bank account you opened using the shelter's address. It does not feel like wealth. It feels like the first real proof that you might not be stuck here forever. Level 3. The hustler. You start building small websites for local businesses you find by walking into their storefronts and simply asking if they have one. Most say no. Most also say no to you, a young man who is clearly not doing well, offering to build them something digital for cash. A hair salon owner takes a chance on you for $300 after you show her the fake website on your phone. You build it in 4 nights at the library, on borrowed time between shifts, and she pays you in cash, counting it out slowly like she is not entirely sure she is making the right decision. Word spreads slowly through a few small businesses in the neighborhood, the way word does among people who talk to each other regularly. You build 7 more websites over the next 6 months, charging between $200 and $500 depending on what the business can afford. You quit the overnight stocking job once the freelance work covers your basic costs, a decision that terrifies you the entire first month. You move out of the shelter into a single room above a laundromat, the first door you have had that locks with your own key in over a year. Ray is still on the same bench most evenings, though you visit less often now that you have somewhere else to be. When you do see him, he asks the same question every time. What did you build today? You start to understand that the question is not really about coding. It is about whether you are still moving forward or whether the momentum has quietly stalled without you noticing. Level 4. The founder. You notice, doing freelance work for small business after small business, that almost none of them can afford proper inventory software, so they track everything by hand or on a spreadsheet that constantly breaks. You start building a simple tool to solve exactly that problem, initially just for your own clients, then as something you could sell more broadly. You name the company after a phrase your mother used to say, something small enough that only you and Marcus would ever recognize it. You max out a credit card you should not have qualified for and put every dollar of freelance income into building the product properly instead of paying yourself anything. You sleep 4 hours a night for months. You pitch the idea to a tiny local business incubator that takes a small equity stake in exchange for $15,000 in seed funding and a shared desk in a converted warehouse. It is not much money. It is the first time anyone with actual capital has looked at what you built and decided it was worth betting on. You call Marcus, who is 19 now, working at a warehouse 2 states away, and tell him about the incubator, about the funding, about the tiny company that finally has a real desk and a real bank account. He is happy for you, genuinely. But there is something underneath the happiness you can hear even over the phone, a distance neither of you names directly. He is still stacking boxes for $14 an hour. You are, for the first time in either of your lives, moving in a completely different direction than the family you grew up in. Level 5, the scaler. The inventory tool finds real traction, first with a handful of local shops, then with a regional chain that discovers you through word of mouth and signs on for 40 locations at once. You hire your first employee, a woman named Elena who used to manage operations at a much larger tech company and took a significant pay cut to join you, betting on the product before almost anyone else outside your original tiny circle did. You and Elena spend 14-hour days together for months, building the company from a 2-person operation into something that actually resembles a real business. You fall in love with her somewhere in the middle of a stretch of consecutive all-nighters, though neither of you says so out loud for another 4 months. You raise a real venture capital round for $1 million, which allows you to hire 8 more employees and move into an actual office instead of the shared warehouse desk. The number on the funding announcement does not feel real to you. Nothing about any of this feels entirely real yet. You visit Ray on the old bench outside the library one evening, mostly out of habit, and tell him about the funding round. He smiles, genuinely proud, and tells you the same thing he always tells you. Keep building, keep asking what you built today, don't let the noise around the money distract you from the actual work. You do not know it yet, but this will be one of the last full conversations you ever have with him. Level 6, the reckoning. The company is growing faster than you can fully process, expanding into 3 new states in a single year. You are 27 years old, engaged to Elena, running a company with 60 employees and a valuation that would have sounded like a lie to you 5 years ago. You are in back-to-back investor meetings the week Ray's health takes a sudden, sharp turn. A shelter worker who has your number from years back calls to tell you he has been hospitalized. You promise yourself you will visit as soon as the current funding round closes, in 9 days. Ray dies on day 7. You are in a meeting with lawyers finalizing term sheets when the call comes through. You step into a hallway to take it, and something in your chest goes completely silent for a long moment before it starts breaking apart in slow motion. You miss the funeral. It is held on a Tuesday morning, the same morning your company officially closes its Series B round at a $340 million valuation, a number that gets written up in 3 different business publications that week. You sit in your office that evening, alone, after everyone else has gone home, and you do not open a single article about the funding. You think about a man who taught you that quitting 1 week too early was the only real failure, and who spent his final years on a public bench because the world had decided, somewhere along the way, that his story was already over. You never fully forgive yourself for the missed visit. You carry it quietly for the rest of your life, a small permanent weight underneath every future success. Level 7, the billionaire. 3 years after Ray's death, the company you built from a library computer crosses a $1 billion valuation, and your personal stake alone crosses into 10 figures for the first time. You marry Elena in a small ceremony that neither of you has much time to properly plan, squeezed between a product launch and an international expansion. Marcus attends, polite but visibly uncomfortable in a rented suit, standing near the back of a room full of investors and executives he has never met and has very little in common with. You hire a full team around yourself for the first time, a wealth manager, a personal assistant, a security consultant after an uncomfortable incident with a stranger who tracked down your home address. You start seeing a therapist twice a week, a calm, unflappable woman who becomes, without either of you fully naming it, the person you can say the most honest things to without any calculation about what she might want in return. That realization does not feel like relief. It feels like a quiet, specific kind of loneliness that money was supposed to solve, and instead only clarified. Marcus calls less often now. You offered, early on, to set him up with a stake in the company or a management role, and he turned both down, telling you flatly that he did not want to owe you his entire life the way it sometimes feels like the whole world already does. You respect the refusal. It also hurts in a way you do not fully admit to Elena. Level 8, the monopoly. The company you started to solve a small inventory problem for a hair salon now processes logistics for roughly 40% of small and mid-sized retail businesses across the country. Regulators start paying attention. You are called to testify before a congressional committee about market concentration and anti-competitive practices, sitting at a table with a nameplate in front of a room full of people who have strong opinions about a company you built on a public library's free 20-minute computer sessions. You answer every question honestly, including the ones that make your legal team visibly uncomfortable. You do not fully win the hearing, in the sense that headlines the next morning are not kind, but you do not lose it either. The company survives the scrutiny mostly intact, though you are forced to divest 2 smaller acquisitions to satisfy antitrust concerns. Your personal net worth crosses $60 billion the same month the hearing takes place, a juxtaposition you find privately, darkly absurd. You have a daughter that year, born the week of the second congressional hearing. You are present for the birth. You miss her first 3 months of consistent bedtime, because a company processing 40% of an entire industry's logistics does not pause for anyone, including its own founder. Level 9, the Titan. You are 41 years old. Your company, expanded now into finance, cloud infrastructure, and logistics far beyond its original inventory tracking roots, has a market capitalization that occasionally makes it, depending on the week, the single most valuable company on Earth. Your personal net worth crosses $500 billion. Governments now factor your company's decisions into national economic policy. When you announce a major expansion into a country's infrastructure, its currency sometimes moves within the hour. You sit on advisory councils for 2 different presidential administrations of different parties, because both find your specific expertise useful regardless of ideology. You give a commencement speech at a university you dropped out of applying to years ago for lack of the application fee. You tell the graduating class the same truth Ray told you on a library bench decades earlier. Most people quit exactly 1 step before the thing would have worked. Most of them nod politely and do not fully absorb it, the same way you did not fully absorb it the first time either. Your daughter is 13 now. She tells her friends her father runs a big company, though she cannot fully articulate what the company actually does, and you are not entirely sure you could explain it simply either anymore. Elena tells you, one night in the kitchen, that she sometimes misses the version of you from the warehouse desk, exhausted and terrified and entirely present, more than she misses anything about your current, vastly larger life. You do not have a good response to that. You think about it for a long time afterward, alone, at 3 o'clock in the morning, staring at a ceiling in a house larger than any building you slept inside during your first 22 years combined. Level 10, the Trillionaire. You are 47 years old. Your net worth crosses $1 trillion on a Tuesday morning, confirmed by 3 separate financial publications within the same hour, making you the first person in recorded history to reach that number. The news cycle covers it for exactly 1 day before moving on to something else entirely, the way the news cycle always does, regardless of how large the number technically is. You do not feel the number the way you thought you might, back on a library bench at 22, imagining what unimaginable wealth would feel like. It feels, mostly, like a very large abstraction attached to a company you built out of genuine desperation and a man's patient, repeated question about what you had built that day. You give away $40 billion that year alone, structured carefully, verified thoroughly, screened by a team specifically trained to prevent the kind of manufactured tragedy that once cost you nearly $200,000 during your early philanthropic years, back when you still believed every story handed to you. You step back from daily operations, handing the company to a team of executives you trust, though you never fully leave the building's orbit. You buy back the old converted warehouse where the incubator once gave you your first shared desk, and you turn it into a technology training center for anyone in the city without stable housing, free classes, free equipment, no application fee, no address requirement. You name it after Ray, a decision Elena helps you make on a night you finally tell her the full story of the missed visit, a story you had never once told anyone else in full, including your own therapist. Marcus visits more now, older, a small business owner himself, having built a modest but genuinely successful landscaping company across 2 states, entirely without your money, exactly the way he always insisted he wanted to. Your daughter is 19, studying something you privately hope has nothing to do with logistics or finance, and mostly, quietly, it does not. She visits Ray's training center sometimes, unprompted, and teaches a beginner coding class on Saturday mornings, never once mentioning to the students in the room that her last name is attached to the company that built the place. You drive past the old public library sometimes, in a car that draws no particular attention, the way you have arranged most of your daily life to draw no particular attention. You sit on the same bench occasionally, in the evening, the way Ray once did, and you watch people come and go through the doors. One evening, a young man sits down on the far end of the same bench, maybe 22, with a duffel bag and a phone with a cracked screen. He glances at you and nods, the small, tired, wary nod of someone who has learned not to expect much from strangers. You do not tell him who you are. You do not tell him what this exact bench eventually led to. You simply ask him, the way a man once asked you on this exact bench decades ago, what he is planning to build. He does not have an answer yet. Almost nobody does at the start. You already know, watching him think about the question for the first time, that he will find one eventually, or he will not. The way it goes for nearly everyone who sits on this bench with nothing but a bag and a cracked phone and no idea yet who they are about to become. The cycle continues.